Ever feel like you and your spouse are speaking different languages? You say tomato, and he or she says tomato. And suddenly, a simple conversation turns into a full blown argument. Have that ever happened in your home, in your relationship? Statistics show that communication problems are a major reason couples struggle. And from my experience as a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified relationship coach, and having been doing this for almost 2 decades, I can tell you that it is something that I see more often than not when couples come in to work on their marriage, their relationships. They will say that we just don't communicate. We don't see eye to eye. We don't talk about things the way that we hear each other. But what if there were ways to bridge that gap, the gap between tomato and tomato? What if there was a way to bridge that gap in your communication to truly connect with your partner on a deeper level? Well, there is. And today we're going to reveal 5 surprising ways your communication style might be hurting your marriage. We'll also share some simple science backed tips to turn things around and build a stronger, happier marriage bond. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is comes from a famous researcher on relationship. You may have heard his name is John Gottman. And John Gottman have identified in his research for over 20 plus years following couples, if identified four what he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right, in marriages, where whenever he sees this in a relationship, he says these 4 things can almost be predictors that this marriage is going to end up in divorce. 95% accuracy around these 4 things. And so the first one that I want to talk about, the 5 ways that you might be, surprising ways you might be hurting your marriage in your communication. He identifies 4 things, and he mentioned criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Now, I want to mention this 2 of those that you may find more often than not, possibly in your relationship, in your marriage, and that is the criticism and defensiveness. Maybe every time you speak to your partner, your husband, your wife, they become defensive. The question is, why do they become defensive? Have you ever wondered why they're so defensive? You may have given a label and you may have said, hey, you're so defensive. Everything you end up in this defensive mode. Well, there's a reason why. There's a reason why he or she is so defensive. Possibly because of this very thing, they feel criticized, they feel attacked. And so their defensiveness come as a result of that. For example, a criticism may sound something like this. You're the person that is, maybe a clean freak, or maybe you like to say things tidy and a certain way. And maybe you are the one that constantly, when you see dishes, you put them in the sink or the dishwasher or washes them. But every time you walk by, not every time, but many times you walk by the kitchen sink, guess what? More dishes are in the sink just laying there. And you know that it's your husband or your wife who is doing that. And so you just have had enough. You're frustrated and you blurt out to him or to her, you never clean up after yourself, right? And then your husband or your wife turns to you and said something like this. Listen to who's talking about not cleaning up after themselves. You always leave your clothes everywhere. Now, where do you think this conversation is going to end? Maybe you know this very often, very well. Maybe you know this very well because you've experienced that even possibly recently. And this conversation began to spiral downwards. All it was about was the dishes in the sink, and now it's off to the races. Everything else is being talked about, and everything is being thrown into the conversation, and tension and voices are being raised and doors are being slammed and people are walking away, and on it goes, right? You know what I'm talking about. You've been there, experienced that. I hear that many times, as I said before, as a licensed marriage and family therapist for almost 2 decades. I've seen and heard these stories, and as in my coaching as well, I've heard them. And, I can tell you that in my 38 years of marriage, because as of this recording, I've been married for 38 years, and in my own personal relationship, we've had our ups and downs. But this is an area that I think my wife and I have done a fairly good job of, and I can't say how we came about doing this, because I guess we were, both of us are pretty much domesticated. I lived on my own for quite some time, and her mom, she made certain that she and her sister learned how to take care of the home, and cooking and making certain they take care of their rooms and their clothes, that kind of thing. So we kind of came into our relationship pretty much domesticated. We could help ourselves. And so it wasn't a big deal for us to wash the dishes, or, for example, my wife, she does most of the cooking. I cook so ever so often. And so if she's cooking, then guess what I do? If the dishes are there, I wash them. It's a team thing, right? I wash them. So that is not an area that we've ever, I can say that in our marriage we've had an issue. I can say that in our marriage we've had an issue. But I know many, many couples have this kind of problems. It could be about other things, right? The clothes and the dirty basket and clothes everywhere and socks here and shoes there, and on it goes. But again, the point is that is where they feel attacked or criticized, and so they become defensive. And this defensiveness is where, again, in criticism, where John Gottman have identified, if this continues and this pattern, this dance continues, watch out, a divorce is possibly looming somewhere down the road. The second area that you might be harming your marriage is when is what we just cited just now, using the you statement. You statement. For example, you always, you never, you don't care, you don't listen, you don't love me, right? The you. When you hear that, what happens again is where the defensiveness comes from, because you're now on a mission to prove that person wrong. You're going to show them that that's not a true statement, and you're going to defend your position. You're going to take your fighting stance, because you're simply saying that's not true, and everything within you says that is not true. So you're going to defend that. So those you statements is what brings that about. So what should you do instead? Well, let me give you a verse of scripture that I think will help us here, where Paul says in Ephesians 4, verse 29, he says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. So speak in a graceful manner. That is not graceful when you are accusing, right? It's more accusatory, and the person feels like you're blaming them for something, right? So use I statements instead. I statements is, for example, going back to the dishes. I feel so frustrated when the dishes pile up, because I like to see our kitchen clean, or I feel it frustrates me, when I walk by and see the clothes all thrown on the floor and everything is out of place, and I just like to have a clean home, and I just feel frustrated. See, it's not a blame, it's simply speaking about your experience, the emotions, what you're experiencing and why. Now, if you've ever experienced anything I've said so far similar to any of these, I want you to just hit that like button below and let me know. That is a way of letting me know that you are relating to what it is I'm saying so far. The third thing you might be doing that is hurting your marriage, and it's you don't even realize that, is when you are in this moment of waiting your turn to talk, right? People say, well, I'm just ready to give a to kind of dispute or debunk or try to prove the other person wrong, because there's got to be this right wrong kind of thing. So you're waiting to talk, you're waiting your turn, you're not really listening, you are just can't wait for the person to give a pause and you jump right in, and then there you go, right? So no listening takes place. I remember in some of my counseling session or coaching sessions where I will say to a spouse, I'll say to a husband or a wife, can I coach you through this? Can I just coach you through what you just did and why it is you experienced what you just did? And most of the time they'll say yes. And I said, let's kind of go back to the beginning, and I'll start coaching them through what they may want to do differently. Now, I'm not advising them or telling them what to do or say they were wrong. I'm saying if the experience you're having as a result of what you just did is not what you want, may I just coach you through a different outcome? And they will say yes, right? But remember, communication is a two-way street. Sometimes we get so caught up in trying to formulate our responses that we just forget to listen. We just don't listen. And sometimes our response has nothing to do with the context or the content. I'm sorry, the content of what was just said. You know, one of my favorite verses of scripture is James chapter 1, verse 19, where he says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Quick to hear, but slow it down. Don't be so reactive, right? Take a deep breath, slow it down, and be able to find a way to summarize what your partner just said to you. It's when you are able to summarize what you've just heard in your own words, what that does show to your partner, to your husband, to your wife, is that you listened and you're now seeking to understand and making certain that what you heard is what was communicated, right? And one of those ways is, of course, your body language is very important. You have to be very much engaged and be present, full attention. You can't be on your phone and saying you're listening. You can't be fiddling with a TV remote and say that you're listening. You can't be watching something on YouTube or wherever else and or on your computer and say you're listening. No, that's not listening. That's hearing, but that's not true listening. Active listening requires all of you to be engaged, making eye contact, reflecting back what you're hearing to your spouse to check in for clarification. Those are what active listening does, right? The fourth area is your tone. Your tone. Have you ever, had your spouse, your partner, your husband, your wife accuse you of just the way you say things? They'll say, they may say to you, it's not what you said, it's how you said what you said, right? Their tone, and they also watch your body language, the eyes, right? The rolling of the eyes, maybe the sucking of the teeth, maybe just the uh, turning away and as if you just, having that look. So it's your body language tone, but also your voice, your vocal inflection, right? So you may say the most well-meaning words, right? But those very words you use can be hurtful if they're delivered with a harsh tone, right? So I can just say, for example, just stop talking. Just stop talking and get out of my face, right? Or I could say, would you just take a break? Let's take a break from our talking right now. Maybe you could just say that in less words because I want to hear you. I want you to know that I'm listening to you. Could you tell me that in less words? I would really appreciate that, right? So I'm asking for something very similar, but I'm saying it a different way. So I do say, when people say, "Oh, it's not what you say, but how you say," I say it's both. It's both what you say and how you say what you say. I love what the scripture said in Proverbs 15, verse 1. I love what Solomon says. He says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Another version said a soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger. So what Solomon is saying here is that your words being soft, right, being gentle, being well chosen words and the way the tone is what's important in conversation in communication. So it is a very important aspect about what you said, but also how you say what you say. So speaking with kindness and respect, even when you disagree, it comes through your body language, your eyes, and also through the tone that you're using. And the fifth way that you may be hurting your marriage and through and don't even realize that is being unappreciative, not appreciating your spouse, not taking them for granted, not saying thank you, not appreciating the work that they do. And you can express that in different ways. You can express that in, just a gratitude statement. You can express that in affection. You can express it in the way that your partner knows, how they want to be loved or be communicated to. So it could be an act of service. It could be an affirmation, words of affirmation. It could be a gift. It could be quality time. It could be physical touch and affection. It could be any of those things. That is what you want to make certain that you show to your partner, to your husband, or to your wife, that they are really appreciated in the relationship. A study by the Gottman Institute found that couples who express gratitude for each other tend tend to be happier. So take a moment each day to thank your spouse, thank your husband, thank your wife for something they do, big or small. One of the practices that my wife and I do on a regular basis, if I handed her something or she hand me something or whatever it might be, we're going to say thank you. We've taught our kids the very same thing, that you say thank you. It's a very simple thing, but it does say a lot. We're not taking someone for granted, and we're not being somehow having this expectation that you're there to serve me. No, no. I love what Jesus said. He said, I didn't come to serve, to be served. I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. So even Jesus, of all persons we need to emulate is him who says, I came not to be served, but to serve and show appreciation for those around you. Remember, my friend, communication is a journey. It's not a destination. It's like a muscle that you have to work on and become better at. And you'll find if you are very intentional, you'll become better at communication. By being mindful of these communication styles, right, and practicing what these tips I've suggested, you can build a stronger and happier marriage. So again, these 5 areas that I've described is number one, criticism and defensiveness. Number two was you statements. Number three was just waiting to talk, not listening, just waiting your turn. And number four was your tone. And number five is being unappreciative. So I want you to be on the lookout for these communication styles. Are you guilty of any of those? Are you guilty of any of those? Now, my friend, if you like what you've heard and would like a free 28-day conversation starters guide, simply go to happyyourmarriagesecrets.com/start and secure your free copy today. The link will be in the description below, and make certain that you also hit that subscribe button if you have not yet done so. I'd really appreciate that. And if you haven't yet subscribed, as I mentioned, that is one way to let me know that this channel is bringing you value. So again, the link will be below. Is happyyourmarriagesecrets.com/start. And make sure you watch this next video right here. It talks about one of the most important thing you can do to safeguard your marriage, which is creating a safe space. And this video talks about how to create a safe space in your marriage. So my friend, with that said, see you next time. God bless you, and watch this video right here.